Welcome everybody to the panel discussion today. I appreciate y'all coming out. Today we are joined with three awesome panelists. I'm excited to kick this off. And what we're going to be talking about, our theme, is why would you want to become AWS Certified? So we're going to kind of cover a gamut of things in that realm. My name is Joe Young. I am the Senior Manager of Workforce Development for the American Welding Society Foundation. And today I am joined with Tom Libris, who is from the great state of Illinois here, just about an hour away. Tom is 6 years into cutting his teeth into a welding career that all started during his sophomore year of high school, where he was able to take advantage of dual credit opportunities, Skills USA competitions, and AWS certifications. After graduating, Tom worked as a maintenance welder, an aerospace welder, and a welder fabricator. He is currently into his first semester of teaching. Tom has held many welding certifications where he was qualified in the 3G and 4G positions with the GMAW and the SMAW process, as well as a 6G and 5F qualification on thin wall stainless steel. Tom is also a proud recipient of an AWS Foundation scholarship, and he hopes to achieve his CWI in the near future. Second, from all the way from the other side of the lake in southeast Michigan, we have Kirk Ewing. Chris is relatively new to teaching, but not welding education. He is currently teaching at the high school, post-secondary, and at Lyft, a military partner and private sector technology company in Detroit, Michigan. He has held several ASME welding qualifications throughout his career, including a 3G aluminum plate and a 6G pipe, and has completed a 4-year apprenticeship and his associate's degree in plant maintenance trades. And he has recently acquired his CWI. Finally, all the way from Douglas, Wyoming, Neil Grundman. Neil is currently the fabrication manager at L&L Fabrication, where he oversees the design, the development, and welding operations involved in the manufacturing of pressure vessel units utilized in the oil and gas industries. Neil himself has an extensive background in welding and fabrication, and he's been a qualified certified welder, a foreman, and a project manager. So thank you all for joining today. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. So first, what I'd like to do is just have you go down. Tell me a little bit about your day-to-day welding operations right now in your current role, and kind of how you maybe got your start in this entire career of welding.
Sure. So personally, right now I'm a full-time night instructor at a local community college, and that's my day-to-day operation. I really have a passion for welding, and I also like to help people, so teaching is just the right fit for me. And then starting out in welding, I honestly didn't even realize that I wanted to be a welder, but when I took a welding course in high school, I immediately kind of fell in love with the craft, and I really enjoy it. So that's how I started out.
Awesome, thank you. Chris?
Well, so I didn't play any sports in high school. My sport was the robotics team, and the robotics team needed some stuff welded. So I'm like, whatever, I'll take the high school welding class. And from there, it spawned, right out of high school, I got an apprenticeship. I was able to go to school on somebody else's dime and dive deeper into the welding and fabrication industry. Trying not to get that echo going. I now teach at the high school that I was a part of. I know the value of that class. Unfortunately, the instructor got sick, and I got a call from the principal like, hey, would you be willing to leave private industry and come take this job making less money and working with high schoolers all day? Which probably sounds like most of your nightmares, but I have fun with it. On top of that, I'm also, like I said, at a local community college. I had also taken classes there. They needed some more help, so I signed up there. And I found a passion for it. I really do love both getting hands-on with the welding portion of it and then being able to share from my experience with the next generation of welders.
Awesome, thank you.
I'm Neil Grundman. Douglas, Wyoming is where I hang my hat. I guess you could say I kind of took a less conventional path to welding than these two gentlemen. I got a 4-year degree in environmental studies at a 4-year college in Iowa, Graceland University. Fell in love with the West and decided to move west when I was right out of college. And young man looking for a job out of college in that industry does not a wealthy or successful man make, typically speaking. So I stumbled into oil and gas industry and started out as a construction foreman, just a roustabout in the industry, and always gravitated towards welding simply because it always seemed like we were waiting for a welder out in the field. So opportunity provided itself to me, and I jumped on it, learned how to weld, mostly carbon steel pipe vessels, and it kind of developed from there. I married my wife. We moved to Gillette, Wyoming, which is the epicenter for thermal coal excavation and mining in North America, and I got on at a coal mine and did a lot of work on some really thick, cool steel, mostly carbon steel as well. And just recently, last 2 years, I got called back to the oil and gas industry and moved down to Douglas, just down the road, and running that facility, I guess, as a fabrication manager. Essentially taking it from concept to execution really gives you the full gamut and the understanding of the processes at hand and the importance of carrying them out. So constantly learning and falling back in love with this industry as a whole. So
Awesome, thank you, Neil. All right, so let's kind of dive right in. How has earning an AWS certification impacted your career path, and what credentials did you earn? Or what credentials do you see other individuals obtaining, and how have they impacted their career path through the operations in which you work? So we'll start with you, Tom.
So I originally started off 3G and 4G qualification for short circuit MIG and stick welding. And while my first job wasn't required me to be certified, it did help, I think, on my resume, and that definitely made a big impact from an employer standpoint. And I first started in maintenance, and while, again, we needed to be certified, the employers knew that since I was certified, I was able to make a sound weld that didn't need to be repaired again. So.
Awesome, thank you. How about you, Chris?
In my situation, I did earn some credentials early on, 3G and 6G, like Joe had mentioned before. And honestly, it was just glitter on my resume at that point. The place that I was working for didn't require it, and I wasn't really looking for a new job. But then when you do go to look for a new job, it looks really, really nice to have some certifications on there. He did also mention that I recently acquired my CWI, and what I have found with that one in particular, especially at my age, I guess you'd say, when somebody hears that you have a CWI, they instantly give you a little bit more respect. They don't need to know, well, what are your credentials? What qualifies you to teach at a college, at the high school, at this job training facility? I mean, you're the young guy, you can't know enough to teach anybody anything, right? Well, then you bust out that little CWI credential, and anybody that knows anything about anything goes, oh, okay, well, you at least have a basic amount of information, and I guess I can listen to you. It does also open up some other doors. If I didn't want to stick with education, I now have the opportunity to go out and do weld inspection entirely on my own. I could start my own business doing that if I wanted to. So I have a security net essentially in that I know I will never be without a job as long as I am still breathing.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, the good thing about what the AWS is doing here is it offers an opportunity for guys to exhibit their skill with, essentially sight unseen. And given the current circumstances of the workplace, as obviously everyone I'm sure here knows, there's a huge shortage for skilled laborers across every industry, not just in welding and fabrication in general. And so really what these certifications are doing for these employees, at least from my experience, is they're making them pop off the list. They're not just, you talk to any welder and they can feed you a line. I can as good as anyone here. They can weld anything from the crack of dawn to a broken heart. and do it with a smile on their face. But what that CWS certification does is it adds some validity to that statement. You're not just saying, oh yeah, I can do that. I've done this. I've done it here, I've done it here, I've done it here, and I did it for these people, and I got the paperwork to show it. In addition to it, I mean, we all know that once you hire on at a company, they're probably going to test you to their individual processes because, you know, you have to with the different F&P numbers and different positions and essential variables. But just knowing that that individual truly can do what they say they can do prior to even showing up to the facility, it saves everybody a lot of time and energy and effort. So if I could give a lot of any advice to someone who's considering getting a certification, I would say, at least in the great state of Wyoming, I mean, you want to get your AWS D11, you want to get your 3 and 4, and you want to get your you want to get a 6G pipe certification, either for carbon, stainless, what have you. It's going to do you a lot of good, and it's going to show a lot of versatility in your skill set, and it'll do you a lot of favors when you're looking for your next job.
Awesome, thank you, Neil. So, kind of looking back at your guys' own experiences in becoming a certified or qualified welder, would you find to be the most challenging piece of that? Was it practicing and honing your skills from a welding standpoint? Was it building up the mental confidence? Can you weigh in on a little bit about the actual welding component in that entire qualification certification arena?
Sure. I think for me, it's definitely just welding under pressure. So when you're just welding normally, maybe at home or in the shop that you're working at, there's not a ton of pressure, you're kind of in your own element, but when you take that test, you're kind of out of the element, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but your heart starts to race a little bit when you know your job's on the line for the test. And so being able to prepare for that and just to be able to perform every day no matter what is probably what was the hardest for me as far as getting a certification.
So would you say preparing, a lot of practice really helped you kind of overcome those challenges?
Yeah, definitely. Just practice and repetition, that was most of it.
How about you, Chris?
Well, from my perspective, I mean, I can answer to, I guess, both the welding and the CWI test. So the welding portion of it, the hardest part was really just getting the helmet on over my ego to sit down and take the test. And honestly, what I mean by that is checking the ego at the door, like, yeah, I've been welding a really long time, I can do these welds, no big deal. And then you realize, oh, there's like a whole book of codes that if I mess up anything on this bad boy, like I'm done. I gotta go take the test over again. So, like, checking yourself before you start and just understanding that everybody who welds thinks they're the best welder in the room. Right? Right? Yeah.
I think what it comes down to, and they kind of alluded to it already, I mean, the difference in achieving a welding certification and just going to work, I mean, the difference is welding like this and welding like this. I mean, we all get nervous. Every single one of us does. And at the end of the day, putting yourself into a situation when you're training for these tests is going to give you the best chance of success. So what I had done in the past is in my garage, if I'm taking a SMAW plate test, I'll set the clock on my watch. And although you won't be as nervous as truly being there in person, you'll have a factor that is pushing you and kind of giving you something to think about and be nervous about. In-person tests are never easy. I don't care who you are. You could have taken it a dozen times. I've seen guys that have passed tests 15 times and failed it for us. I've seen guys do the opposite, fail it 15 times and pass it in person. Everyone reacts differently, and knowing how you do in those situations is really going to help you understand how to be successful. Checking your ego is a very big thing, and just being able to understand how to weld in those circumstances. Because when you're welding out in the field, we've all been in that place where that unit has to be up by the end of the shift period. You're not leaving that facility until the machine is back up. So that kind of press is going to be the same kind of press that you're going to feel when you're taking these tests. And so I really do think it does a great job of putting the welder candidate in a situation that they're going to face in the field. Maybe not every day, but certainly in situations that's going to separate the men from the mice. So.
And I imagine that kind of plays into the employability piece. Maybe you can weigh in a little bit on that, Neil. Like, an individual has a AWS credential, coming in to get a job. What value do you see if you're going to hire that hand, and can you maybe weigh in a little bit on that front of it?
Sure. I mean, from a managerial standpoint, I mean, you can't really put a value on being able to tell somebody, do this, and walk away. Not having to worry about coming back. Obviously, we have obligations as a coded facility to keep an eye on to make sure processes are followed and they're in the right criteria. But, I mean, being able to know that that individual is going to do what you ask them to do, they're going to have the knowledge to follow the processes, execute them effectively, and to make a cosmetically and mechanically sound weld on a daily basis, that's a value that makes someone absolutely unreplaceable. So being able to prove that ahead of time really adds a lot of value. Yes, we will test. Yes, we will ensure that the individual can do what we say that they can do. But being able to tell them, I need this welded up by the end of shift, and walking away, coming back at lunch break and taking a look at it and going, looks good, walk away, and then come back at the end of shift and x-ray it and it passes, that's huge.
Excellent. Chris, maybe you can weigh in a little bit about your journey in becoming a CWI and that whole, endeavor, and maybe kind of, what advice would you give somebody who's maybe, trying to also earn that credential and following that path as well?
So there seems to be this cloud of mystery over the CWI test that's really simply answered by just going to the website and reading through what all the requirements are. It's intimidating. It's intimidating because everybody going into it is letting you know that there's like a 75% failure rate for first-time test takers. And that's like the number one statistic you hear about it. They don't tell you that maybe some of those test takers aren't great at standardized testing, or that maybe they don't have the industry experience already. My personal experience was a little bit different from how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to register a month in advance, and you get all your books in advance, you get homework that you do leading up to it. My books showed up Saturday, and the class started Sunday. So I got to do the homework at night while taking the class during the day. So I guess the number one piece of advice is take the class. The AWS is currently working on, a 2-week class instead of the standard 1-week class that they have. They also offer the 1-week class, they offer the online classes, so take the class and pay attention. All of the information is there. Now, they require you to have a certain amount of experience before you can even sit for the test. So, one, you can't just walk in off the street and decide, you know what, I want to get into inspection, I want my CWI. I've never welded before, but that shouldn't be a big deal, right? No, that's not going to fly. And then 2, you get all these classes that you can take, you get all the prep work. If you do everything that they help you with ahead of time, your chances, I think, are greatly increased with that. It's a 3-part test. You got to have your general knowledge. So, the benefit to me at that point is I'm already teaching the general knowledge, so I get to repeat that general knowledge over and over and over again at a bunch of different levels. So if I don't thoroughly understand it, I can't really teach it. So the general knowledge portion of it, at least in my situation, or in an instructional situation, was already taken care of. Then you got to be able to pass the hands-on inspection portion of it, and then the code book. The other piece of advice I'll give is do not try and memorize anything from that code book. The whole purpose is the absolute opposite of memorization. They don't want you to memorize anything because the codes could change, and then what you have memorized is ancient information. So instead, know where to find the information in the code book. I heard some people give me advice, go with the thinner code books, it's easier to find the information. It's not if you know where to look for it. So as long as you know where the information is, don't memorize anything, and have some decent general knowledge going into it, you should be okay.
Excellent. And then maybe, Tom, maybe you can weigh in on kind of what value do you see in the Certified Welding Inspector credential, and why is that something you want to pursue in the future?
Sure. So I'm at midway obtaining my CWI. I have 2 more tests to take, the Part A and the Part C, but I think as far as just a standpoint of you don't really know what you can do until you have it. So a lot of times people count themselves out before they even have tried to get it or have gotten it. I think as a welder, it's really beneficial for yourself and then to move up in the industry as well. So being either an engineer or a CWI on the job can open up some really big opportunities. And for some of the welders out there who feel like they maybe are already topped out, this can be their next step to keep climbing that ladder of success. So
Awesome. Excellent. So, I guess, what, in your guys' opinion, what is the biggest takeaway or the biggest benefit that you see in earning a credential from the American Welding Society?
I would say the biggest credential for me personally is a confidence boost, okay, that you get when you get that certification, and just having confidence going out and applying for jobs and that sort of thing.
Cool. Right on. How about you, Chris? What is the biggest takeaway, or when you earn a credential from the American Welding Society, what is the biggest value that you feel is earned from that once you receive it?
I guess it depends on the credential. You can look at it as a starting point, or you can look at it as an achievement of advancement, kind of like Tom was talking about. With my CWI in particular, I view that as a jump-off point. My background is in the hands-on, the welding and the instruction of the welding, not necessarily in the inspection and all the inspection tools that goes into it and the metallurgy side of things. If I was to branch out as an independent inspection agency or start my own company, I would then want to work with a senior CWI for a period of time until I felt confident in my skills like I do as a welder currently. So I feel confident in my skills as a welder enough that I can then teach the next generation. As an inspector, I'm still at that early entry level stage. That credential it's the bare minimum. It says that I've completed the minimum requirements to then go out and put my stamp on somebody's work. It doesn't say that I am the end all be all because I have my CWI card. Now you all have to listen to me.
I think the biggest thing that you have to learn or have to go with these certifications is, let's be honest, the American Welding Society, it's at the very least recognized in the United States of America, but it really is a worldwide name when it comes to joining materials together, and it's one that comes with a great deal of clout. And so at least in North America for certain, getting an AWS certification is something that's going to give you a more robust sense of achievement, and it's going to be recognized at the majority of the places that you would face. So really, it'll give you a great sense of achievement, yes, and it'll improve also your confidence, but you're going to be recognized as an individual that can do this with a high level of competence no matter where you go in the United States and probably even North America.
Excellent, thank you. So this one's, we're going to kind of, I often hear about being 6G certified, 6G qualified. It's, from your guys' standpoint, and maybe your region, locally, what value in getting earning a certification or a qualification in your area would be trump the 6G, or what are your thoughts on that entire weld test or that qualification in general?
Sure. I know, for me personally, in our community college, we don't even really teach pipe welding. We're maybe going to start teaching it in a future date, but it's just not something that is needed in our area. And I think a lot of people can say that. There's some really hard structural tests out there, and just because you're 6G certified doesn't mean you're going to be able to pass that structural test. I know there's that saying, if it ain't round, put it down, but there's a lot of work out there that you don't need to be a pipe welder to do. So.
Awesome. And then what do you think is the hardest, weld test that you've taken to date in that arena?
So, the hardest weld test I've taken is definitely a pipe welding test. When I worked in aerospace, I had to take a 6G and 5F welding test, and it was like micro pipe welding in a sense. So the tubing I was welding was 1/4 inch diameter, and it was 0.35 wall thickness, which is like common MIG wire out there. So it's just different, a lot different than what you might think of when you hear pipe welding.
Sure.
So.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. What are your thoughts, Chris?
So I did take the 6G pipe test, and it was by far the most difficult welding test I've taken to date. I came into that college class, having taken 2 years of welding in high school, thinking I was the bomb.com when it came to welding as it was. And that one kind of put me in my place a little bit. It took me a lot of practice to get there. I finally did get it, and it did very, very little for my career. I was already working at an employer that did absolutely no pipe welding. So 6 months after I completed that test that I had worked so hard to achieve, it was null and void. That's not to say that it's not valuable. That's not to say that all that work and effort that I put into it didn't build my skills up so that I could continue on in the future. It was definitely a point of pride for me. But being from the Detroit Motor City, pipe welding and the construction trades, there's construction everywhere, so there's always going to be the need for shielded metal arc welding and pipe welding in particular. But we're manufacturing, and manufacturing is all MIG and TIG.
Excellent. In Wyoming, it's a carbon corridor. Whether it's coal, whether it's natural gas, whether it's oil and gas, it's all being done in Wyoming. So the 6G pipe test is the holy grail, and what a lot of people epitomize and want their skills to be at in order to consider themselves a bona fide welder. I would agree with that wholeheartedly, given our geographic location. Everyone wants to get their shielded metal arc 6G pipe test down pat so they can run their own welding rig and make $250,000 to $500,000 a year. And that's all fine and dandy to pay down the house, but what are you going to do for the rest of your career? We can't all be contract welders for our entire career. There are very few of us, in fact, that actually statistically do that. So, if I would give good advice, what I feel is good advice to a person who's figuring out, get your D11 plate test in the vertical and overhead position. Whether you're welding carbon, steel, stainless, core 10, it doesn't matter. It has far-reaching ramifications. Being able to follow that procedure and execute that weld on a daily basis, it's going to keep you employed every day of the year that you want to be employed anyways. Might take Christmas off, I suppose.
Yeah, I only just recently realized that there's not just 6G, but 6GR, the restricted 6G test, where they put another plate on top of it. They're like, yeah, you know how hard the 6G test was? Well, just to mess with you, we're going to put a plate on top of that so you can only get at it at a certain angle. Good luck.
Get your mirror out. Oh, yeah.
Excellent. So, thinking back, maybe earlier in your career or early on, was there a mentor, an educator, a family member? What really gave you the gumption to go ahead and explore the American Welding Society and the certifications that were offered? Maybe you can weigh in on kind of like how you first heard about it and maybe who that person was and what they meant to you in that respect.
Sure. So back in high school, I had a welding instructor. Her name was Brandy Burgess, and for me, she really just gave me a whole bunch of opportunities. I had a lot of knowledge, I had a little bit of skill, but I didn't know kind of where to go, and she kind of pointed me in the right direction with getting started and going to college. She helped me get some scholarships and told me the opportunities for AWS Foundation scholarships. So if it wasn't for her, I never probably would have been affiliated with AWS, and I definitely wouldn't have gone to community college without those scholarships. So that's where I started.
So my high school instructor's name is Nick Riggets, and he's just an all-around awesome dude. I had a very difficult high school career, just personally, and the weld shop was kind of my escape. I could come in after hours and practice. He'd encourage us, give us the time necessary to practice for the skills competitions, AWS competitions, everything that was going on. And just treating you like a person first, and then all the welding stuff comes secondary. I'm honored to be able to teach that class that I took at high school now, just for that reason. I know the benefit on the welding side, and I know that each one of those kids is going through something different, and I'm able to treat them as the young adults that they are and give them that safe space. One of the first things we go over at the beginning of every year is that the number one rule in every shop is safety, right? Well, for me, safety is 1.5. Rule number one is respect. I will treat you with respect, and you will treat me with respect, and everything will be sunshine and rainbows.
Well, I mean, I could tell you what my high school metal shop's name was. His name was Mr. Lapinga, but I think I had maybe 2 discussions with him my entire way through high school. I never really knew him, but I mean, my love for welding came long after, as I had told you guys. But I mean, really where I came into my own when it came to welding was I read. I read constantly. I'm not like you guys. I don't read National Treasure or entertaining books. I read textbooks. It's just what I do. And the AWS became that corridor of knowledge for me and how to figure out how to do these things. I didn't have a lot of hands-on training. It was more about me reading about it, and then I would watch Roy Crumrine do it on YouTube, and then I'd go out and try to execute it in my garage or at the shop after hours. And really the amount of knowledge that they have out there and available to each and every one of us is completely astounding. And without which you probably wouldn't be speaking with me, because I would have quit after my first 3 months because I just didn't have it. So that's what the AWS had offered to me, for sure.
Excellent, great. What I'd like to do is, if anybody has any questions from the audience, I would like to maybe capture a few thoughts, maybe a few questions. We got a mic up here, feel free to ask Tom, Chris, or Neil a question or two. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts.
So I have a question for you. I've been the guy who's supervised the welding tests, and one of my biggest frustrations has been the personnel department, who would send basically anybody who came to the door, and instead of rejecting them, saying, hey, you're not qualified, they'd just go, well, let them go take a test. And so I would be, failing 80, 90% of the people who would come through the door. So my question to you as the instructors is, should the welding programs at least offer, I don't think they can require, the CWS test? And then as a fabricator, should that CWS test be at least the foot in the door, as I think you put in later, as far as part of that hiring program?
Absolutely. I mean, our job when we're hiring welders, like it or not, or I'm sure there's a better way to put it, is, we have to profile our client or our candidates before they come in, and being able to just reject people off the bat, and maybe reject is a dull way to put it, but at the end of the day, it's about getting the right people in front of the right company at the right time. And in order to do that, you have to profile the individuals and screen them effectively. Putting the janitor out there and expecting them to pass a weld test is not only unrealistic, but it's unfortunate for everybody involved, because there's a great deal of expertise that comes with learning these processes, and just put someone out there in the wrong position, it's just not good for anybody. It wastes your time, it wastes the individual's time, and in addition, it didn't gain the company anything. So being able to see these certifications walking up makes a huge, huge, huge difference.
Follow-up question. What's the reality check for the person who's going for the test? Like, before you go for the test, it's like, dude, you're ready, or go back and practice some more. You guys, especially you instructors, you ever tell people, how do you tell them you're not ready? Or
Pass it in class first before you go pay for it. Or find the job first and let them pay for it. I tell students this all the time based on my own experience. Yeah, I struggled through that 6G test, got the cert, went to work, didn't use it. Okay? Sometimes you get a qualified individual in, sometimes, like I said, personnel department just puts anybody in there. So yes, having some sort of credential ahead of time from the school, from the AWS, whatever that initial credential is, just to say that I've passed that base level information, like the AWS Sense program, for example. You pass through the Sense program, you've already performed a certain number of qualified welds. Now it's time to practice that particular test, whatever you want to qualify or certify in, and go have that done. But you could also get the job first if you have the skills, they bring you in, and let them pay for whatever certification it is that they need you to have. That's one of the conversations I have with my students all the time, is everybody is very concerned with getting certified right off the bat. Certification shows that you have a certain level of skill behind you already. It's not necessarily for those entry-level welders. That's what the Sense program exists for. So I'm a huge proponent of the certificate program that the Sense offers, and then once you've gained some skill and the specific topic or area that you want to certify in, then certify in that area, and if you can, let somebody else pay for it.
To me, I mean, you talked about, what was the phrase you used, the aha moment or the breaking point? I mean, we have a couple of guys in our shop, more than a couple. I mean, we try to recruit internally. I mean, how our outfit is structured is we bring in guys as structural welders. Can you pass a D11? When they can, they weld on our skids and our non-coded, they're non-ASME components, sorry. And I have a particular guy who is testing to get his 6G test down so he could be a Section 9 code welder for the ASME. Sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback. I'm gonna get cozy over here. So he took his first test and just completely hammered it. It was quite terrible. Even admittedly so, he took that coupon, kept it in his toolbox to tell the supervisor that was the new guy's weld test, just to screw with him. But he got on to get to the point where he could pass that 6G weld test. And the turning point for me was when I went to his toolbox and I grabbed that original hammer test and I said, now fix this, then you're ready. And he did. And now he is a certified ASME Section 9 welder. So to me, being able to work outside of just the test variables, yeah, we can pass the test, but does that application extend into day-to-day operation? Can you go in and fix somebody's enormous screw-up? And if you can, guess what? You're a hell of a welder.
Any additional questions, thoughts, comments?
Thanks, Neil. Can we turn on the mic?
Is it on?
I think it's on. Yeah, it's on.
Oh, there you go.
Tall, sorry.
Perfect.
Our works holds all of our certs for us. We don't individually go get them. We don't go to a testing center. We have an internal process because a lot of our stuff is government work. So they have to kind of cert us through that and level us where we fall. Is it still worth going out and
It sounds to me like what you're talking about is a qualification versus a certification. So internally, you're qualifying them to your standards versus an exterior organization, say the AWS, giving you a certification towards their code book. It's up to your business how you choose to operate like that. Qualifications, there's nothing wrong with a qualification. If you're concerned with bringing people in and then raising them to the level that they are ready to qualify, now you need to look at maybe starting an apprenticeship program. There are plenty of non-union. My apprenticeship was non-union, and I am super, super thankful for it. So an apprenticeship program would be an awesome option. You can include education from a local community college that's running a welding program. There's all over the country. And you can use that on top of the hands-on experience they get at the job site to then build their skills up to the level where you can now say that they are a fabricator. They're no longer an apprentice, or they're past their probationary period. They've got their qualification from your company. And really, that's what you want anyway, right? You want them to qualify to whatever it is that you're doing at your job site. As a hiring manager, a certification is great, but I need them to know what I need them to know to do this job. That's what I'm hiring you to do, is this job, not whatever you qualified for. So if you can get them in the door, get them interested, teach them up, they're more likely to stick around with you. Experience they get at the job site to then build their skills up to the level where you can now say that they are a fabricator. They're no longer an apprentice, or they're past their probationary period. They've got their qualification from your company. And really, that's what you want anyway, right? You want them to qualify to whatever it is that you're doing at your job site. As a hiring manager, a certification is great, but I need them to know what I need them to know to do this job. That's what I'm hiring you to do, is this job, not whatever you qualify for. So if you can get them in the door, get them interested, teach them up, they're more likely to stick around with you.
And he's absolutely right. I mean, when you're working on your individual WPQ with an outfit, I mean, at the end of the day, they're certifying you to their processes, their variables, their PFIs, all that. And having the certification, it takes you outside of that. You're not subjected to just what their WPQ says intercompany. You have a separate document with a governing body in welding in America that says, yes, you are certified to do this.
And that helps with employee retention as well. If they're qualified only to your process and the job holds those qualifications, person is qualified, but if they go elsewhere, well, now you got to recertify in a different organization. So they got to consider that if they decide to move on from your company.
You to do it, because especially if they're working with a government operation, they're not going to share that information with anyone else, and they're sure as heck not going to say, oh yeah, for sure, this individual did weld that for us then. They're not allowed to. But your certification, it for sure negates any kind of confusion that would come with that transfer of qualifications. So.
And that helps with employee retention as well. If they're qualified only to your process and the job holds those qualifications, person is qualified with it. But if they go elsewhere, well, now you got to recertify in a different organization. So they got to consider that if they decide to move on from your company.
Does that answer your question?
So we appreciate everybody, and thank you again. Please feel free if you have any questions about the American Welding Society, your standards, certifications. The booth is on the far end, right at the entrance, at the end of the hall down here. There's a plentiful amount of information and the right individuals that can point you in the right direction. If you're interested in more panel discussions that are happening all throughout Fabtech here today at the Careers in Welding booth, feel free to check out this sign here, and it kind of gives you all the details, and there's also going to be social media posts as well. So thank you all, and enjoy Fabtech. It's good to see everybody here and back in person, so fun times.